Caitlin Clark remembers wearing "Teach Me How to Gymmer" t-shirt. Salt Lake City. Gymmer mania spread all the way to Iowa in 2011, touching the life of a young Caitlin Clark, long before the now sharpshooting WNBA superstar was on the sports radar. While Jimmer Fredette was putting on the biggest one-man NCAA tournament performance since Steph Curry in 2008, Clark was admiring the long-range sniper's moxie from afar. Clark recently revealed on the Bird's Eye View podcast with WNBA legend Sue Bird that she wore a "Teach Me How to Gymmer" t-shirt as a young girl. "I grew up like a basketball junkie," Clark explained. "Even if you're not intentionally watching and paying attention, you're just absorbing what you're consuming. I always watch Steph or even Jimmer, who I love." The mention of Fredette appeared to trigger a memory for Clark, as a large smile grew on her face. "I told Jimmer when we were doing Sue's Places, he was one of my favorite players growing up," Clark shared. "There was this famous song, 'Teach Me How to Gymmer,' and I had the shirt that said, 'Teach Me How to Gymmer.'" About Caitlin Clark. Clark has been a lightning rod for women's basketball hype since early in her college career with the Iowa Hawkeyes. Clark never averaged fewer than 26.6 points per game, a mark she achieved as a freshman in 2020-21. She went on to average 28.4 points, 7.1 rebounds, and 8.2 assists in 139 college games. The gaudy numbers made Clark an easy selection for the Indiana Fever, who had the #1 pick in 2024. The 23-year-old was named WNBA Rookie of the Year and All-WNBA after averaging 16.5 points, 5.5 boards, 8.8 assists, and 1.3 steals as a rookie. She is averaging 16.5 points, 5.5 rebounds, and 8.8 assists this season with Indiana despite missing several games with a variety of injuries. Before Caitlin Clark was selling out arenas, breaking NCAA records, and hitting logo threes like they were free throws, she was just a kid in West Des Moines with a hoop in the driveway, a ball in her hands, and a white cotton t-shirt that made her feel unstoppable. Across the chest in bold letters it read, "Teach Me How to Gymmer." It wasn't just merch, it was a movement. Back in the early 2010s, Jimmer Fredette was the guy. At BYU, he was draining shots from distances coaches used to call bad looks. The whole country was talking about Jimmer range, before Caitlin Clark range was ever a phrase. He was fearless. He was fun. And for a young basketball junkie in Iowa, he was everything the game should feel like. "I told Jimmer this when I was doing Sue's Places," Clark recalled in an interview with Sue Bird. "He was one of my favorite players growing up, and there was the famous song, 'Teach Me How to Gymmer.' I had the shirt." Her grin as she said it was proof. Some heroes stay heroes, even when you start to become one yourself. The shirt that started something. Clark's t-shirt wasn't just apparel, it was a kind of basketball passport. She wore it to shooting sessions with her dad, to Saturday morning rec games, and sometimes just around the house when she wanted to channel a little extra swagger. When she pulled it on, she wasn't just Caitlin, the kid with homework and chores. She was Caitlin, the long-range assassin. She imagined defenders backing up in disbelief, crowds rising before the ball even swished, announcers stretching their voices to keep up with her scoring bursts. The shirt was a reminder. You can play the game with both excellence and joy. In hindsight, it's easy to draw the line from that shirt to the player she became, comfortable firing from deep, unafraid of the big stage, and always feeding off the crowd. Learning from Jimmer without meeting him. At the time, Clark didn't know she'd one day meet Fredette, much less tell him the story herself. But she studied him, even from afar. She learned that confidence isn't arrogance if you've done the work. That range can be a weapon if you practice it enough to make it second nature. And most importantly, that basketball, no matter how serious the stakes, should never lose its sense of fun. For young Caitlin, "Teach Me How to Gymmer" wasn't about copying his exact game. It was about embracing a mindset. Play free, play fearless, and make people believe in something bigger than the scoreboard. The full circle moment. Years later, Caitlin Clark's own legend would grow in eerily similar ways. Clips of her pulling up from the logo would trend on social media. Opponents would shake their heads as if to say, "There's no defending that." Kids would wear shirts and jerseys with her name, just as she once wore Jimmer's. When she finally told Fredette about her t-shirt on Sue's Places, it wasn't just a fun anecdote. It was a nod to the way the game passes inspiration forward. Fredette, now a 3x3 basketball star and still an icon to many, smiled at the idea that the little girl who wore his slogan had turned into a player making her own. Somewhere maybe there's a kid in Indiana right now wearing a "Teach Me How to Caitlin" shirt, dreaming their own driveway dreams. Why it matters. It's easy to overlook the role small things play in big journeys. A shirt? Just cotton and ink. But for Clark, it was also a declaration of identity. I'm a shooter. I'm a believer. I'm part of this story. It's why she speaks about it with such fondness, not because she thinks the shirt made her who she is, but because it represents a time when her love for basketball was pure, unburdened by contracts, schedules, and media obligations. Back when she was just a kid falling in love with the game. And in a league where she now inspires others, keeping that thread of joy alive might be her most important skill of all. Caitlin Clark might be writing her own chapter in basketball history now, but the "Teach Me How to Jimmer" shirt is proof that every chapter begins with someone else's story. Hers just happened to start with a guy who shot from anywhere, smiled while doing it, and made a whole generation of kids believe that range was an art form. The torch has been passed. The shirts are different. The range is still ridiculous. And the joy? That part never changes.